Castlevania, one of the early horror games, much like a famous YouTuber, I have a similar experience to my introduction to the story. A friend came over with three cartridges, said, "You want to play Castlevania?" Immediately, my mind summoned up images of Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the horrors of the night. I popped the first game in, and it took me 45 minutes to get past the first level, and when I did, it was just with one life left. These games were brutally hard. The third one, with some practice, I was able to just squeak to the castle, but never any further. The second one, I got pretty far in, but because of the cryptic stuff, I hit a stone wall that wasn't my own fault. This summer, Konami finally did something right. Even a broke clock is right twice a day. Only this is a broke calendar that's right for the first time in over a decade. But they released the Castlevania Legacy Collection, which has one, two, three, four, two of the Game Boy games, well, three if you want to count Kid Dracula, which I don't, and Castlevania Bloodlines. And I love this collection. Among the best feature I think it adds is state saves, which make these games so much more manageable. And with a recent update, the Japanese versions of the game, which in some cases like Castlevania 3 is actually an easier version of the game. Now, I have looked, apparently there were cheat codes for Castlevania 4 where you enter in certain names and they give you effects like infinite lives, one heart gives you 99 infinite hearts, but these codes don't seem to work. Maybe they only work with the Japanese, I don't know, but if Konami programmed these out of effect, shame on you, you're only supposed to port the game. That's a stink move, but overall, I love the Legacy Collection. It takes me back to my earliest days of gaming. With state saves, I was actually able to beat Castlevania 4, which I can safely say is my second favorite game in the franchise. Symphony of the Night will always be my favorite, but I had a Super Nintendo copy of Castlevania 4. I could never get past the Mode 7 part where the room rotates, because for me, the room would never rotate. And for the longest time, I thought I was doing something wrong until I learned about Mode 7, and apparently my cartridge was busted and wouldn't go into Mode 7, which I actually got brand new and packaged, so go figure. I have talked to some people and no one seemed to encounter this but me. I've even had people say, "Are you sure your Super Nintendo wasn't broken?" I'm like, I used to play Chrono Trigger in Final Fantasy 3. Final Fantasy 3, the open world is always Mode 7. And in Chrono Trigger, when you're on the Epoch flying, it goes into Mode 7, so it wasn't my Super Nintendo, so it was nice to finally be able to beat this game. Castlevania Bloodlines is a great experience. The Game Boy games are what they are, and just as they were, and are worth visiting. This collection is worth the $20 price tag. I wish they could have added a couple more games like Legacy for the Game Boy with Sonia Belmont. It even would have been nice to have the 64 game Legacy of Darkness, which I actually quite liked myself. I didn't like plain Castlevania 64, but with the additions they added to Legacy of Darkness, I found it a more enjoyable game. Maybe even some of the Game Boy Advance titles could have found their way on this. It's not a perfect collection, and I feel it's definitely lacking, but Konami, if you would add DLC, these type of games in DLC, us Castlevania fans would gladly buy it. I would, for the Legacy of Darkness on the N64 game, I would gladly fork out $10 just for that. And I would fork out a few dollars here or there for the other titles. The games, like I said, they're as hard as you remember, but in some cases, like Castlevania 3, if you switch to the Japanese version, they are easier. This game brought me back to my childhood. It was a fun collection, and I hope we either get a Legacy Collection 2 or DLC, because Konami, by not doing it, you're taking money and throwing it away. Us Castlevania fans would buy it. I would urge Konami to learn from what Capcom is doing. Capcom is currently regaining the trust of their fans with stuff like Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 2, Devil May Cry 5, and that's what you need to do, Konami. Resurrect some of your flagship series. Give us a Castlevania Demon Castle game. Even expand the lore, because only certain Belmonts fought Dracula, which, by the way, another two you should re-release, Konami. And I know this is supposed to be a review of the Legacy Collection, but I'm just throwing stuff out there. Give us the PS2 games, Curse of Darkness and Lament of Innocence, because it gets to something else you could do, and that's the thing. This Legacy Collection just gets me thinking about possibilities, what other Castlevania stuff we can get. Leon Belmont vowed the Belmont clan would hunt the night. Not every Castlevania story has to focus on Dracula. You could do Castlevania side stories about the Belmonts in between the ones that face Dracula and what evils they fought. Maybe Simon's son tangled with another powerful vampire. Maybe Leon's son just stopped a powerful leader of werewolves. There are still countless possibilities you could do with even not getting quite to the Demon Castle lore, but for what the Legacy Collection is, to revisit games I've never played before, to finally play Bloodlines, I'm gonna have to give this game an A+. It's exactly as you remember it, but if you're intimidated by the difficulty, there's no shame in abusing the state saves. Just be patient, state save strategically, and you'll get through these games. So, get the Castlevania Legacy Collection if you hadn't. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe. And Montober continues. Over and out.